What is the phobia of the number 13 called?
Fear of the number 13 is known as tridecaphobia, tridecaphobia, or triskidecaphobia. Persons may fear any situation involving this number, including a house number, the floor of a building, or the 13th day of the month. Many buildings omit labeling the 13th floor as such for this reason. A phobia can develop for a wide range of objects, situations, or organisms.
What are the upper and lower shells of a turtle called?
The turtle, order Testudinas, uses its shell as a protective device. The upper shell is called the dorsal carapace and the lower shell is called the ventral plastron. The shell sections are referred to as the scuates. The carapace and the plastron are joined at the sides.
When was the term antibiotic first used?
Antibiotics are chemical products or derivatives of certain organisms that inhibit the growth of or destroy other organisms. The term antibiotic, from the Greek anti, meaning against, and biosis, meaning life, refers to its purpose in destroying a life form. In 1889 Paul Wheelman, 1861–1932, used the term antibiosis to describe bacterial antagonism. He had isolated piocyanin, which inhibited the growth of bacteria in test tubes but was too lethal to be used in disease therapy. It was not until the mid-1940s that Selman Waxman, 1888–1973, used the term antibiotic to describe a compound that had therapeutic effects against disease.
What is the Red Queen hypothesis?
This hypothesis, also called the law of constant extinction, is named after the Red Queen in Lewis Carroll's, 1832–1898, Through the Looking Glass, who said, "Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place." The idea is that an evolutionary advance by one species represents a deterioration of the environment for all remaining species. This places pressure on those species to advance just to keep up.
What was the first commercial use of genetic engineering?
Recombinant DNA technology was first used commercially to produce human insulin from bacteria. In 1982, genetically engineered insulin was approved for use by diabetics. Insulin is normally produced by the pancreas, and the pancreas of slaughtered animals such as swine or sheep was used as a source of insulin. To provide a reliable source of human insulin, Researchers obtained DNA from human cells carrying the gene with the information for making human insulin. Researchers made a copy of DNA carrying this insulin gene and moved it into a bacterium. When the bacterium was grown in the lab, the microbe split from one cell into two cells. And both cells got a copy of the insulin gene. Those two microbes grew, then divided into 4. Those 4 into 8, the 8 into 16, and so forth. With each cell division, the two new cells each had a copy of the gene for human insulin. And because the cells had a copy of the genetic recipe card for insulin, they could make the insulin protein.
Which risk factors affect one's health?
Such characteristics as age, gender, work, family history, behavior, and body chemistry are some of the factors to consider when deciding whether one is at risk for various conditions. Some risk factors are statistical, describing trends among large groups of people but not giving information about what will happen to individuals. Other risk factors might be described as causative exposure to them. Has a direct effect on whether or not the person will become sick.
How long does it take food to digest?
The stomach holds a little under 2 quarts, 1.9 liters, of semi-digested food that stays in the stomach 3 to 5 hours. The stomach slowly releases food to the rest of the digestive tract. 15 hours or more after the first bite started down the alimentary canal. The final residue of the food is passed along to the rectum and is excreted through the anus as feces.
What is the modified Mercalli scale?
The modified Mercalli scale is a means of measuring the intensity of an earthquake. Unlike the Richter scale, which uses mathematical calculation to measure seismic waves, the modified Mercalli scale uses the effects of an earthquake on the people and structures in a given area to determine its intensity. It was invented by Giuseppe Mercalli, 1850 to 1914, in 1902 and modified by Harry Wood, 1879 to 1958. And Frank Newman in the 1930s to take into consideration such modern inventions as the automobile and the skyscraper. The modified Mercalli scale only felt by a few under especially favorable circumstances. Felt only by a few sleeping persons, particularly on upper floors of buildings. Some suspended objects may swing. Felt quite noticeably indoors. Especially on upper floors of buildings, but may not be recognized as an earthquake. Standing automobiles may rock slightly. Vibration like passing of truck. During the day felt indoors by many. Outdoors by few. At night some awakened. Dishes, windows, doors disturbed, walls make creaking sound. Sensation like heavy truck striking building. Standing automobiles rocked noticeably. Felt by nearly everyone, many awakened. Some dishes, windows, and so on broken, cracked plaster in a few places, unstable objects overturned. Disturbances of trees, poles, and other tall objects sometimes noticed. Pendulum clocks may stop. Felt by all, many frightened and run outdoors. Some heavy furniture moved, a few instances of fallen plaster and damaged chimneys. Damage slight. Everybody runs outdoors. Damage negligible in buildings of good design and construction. Slight to moderate in well-built ordinary structures, considerable in poorly built or badly designed structures. Some chimneys broken. Noticed by persons driving cars. Damage slight in specially designed structures. Considerable in ordinary substantial buildings with partial collapse, great in poorly built structures. Panel walls thrown out of frame structures. Fall of chimneys, factory stacks, columns, monuments, walls. Heavy furniture overturned. Sand and mud ejected in small amounts. Changes in well water. Persons driving cars disturbed. Damage considerable in specially designed structures. Well-designed frame structures thrown out of plumb. Great in substantial buildings, with partial collapse. Building shifted off foundations. Ground cracked. Conspicuously. Underground pipes broken. Some well-built wooden structures destroyed. Most masonry and frame structures destroyed with foundations, ground badly cracked. Rails bent. Landslides considerable. From river banks and steel slopes. Shifted sand and mud. Water splashed, slopped over banks. Few, if any, masonry structures remain standing. Bridges destroyed. Broad fissures in ground. Underground pipelines completely out of service. Earth slumps and landslips in soft ground. Rails bent greatly. Damage total. Waves. Seen on ground surface. Lines of sight and level distorted. Objects thrown into the air.
What are the highest and lowest recorded temperatures on Earth?
The highest temperature in the world was recorded as 136 degrees Fahrenheit 58 degrees Celsius at El Aziziyah, El Aziyah, Libya. On September 13, 1922, the highest temperature recorded in the United States was 134 degrees Fahrenheit 56.7 degrees Celsius. In Death Valley, California, on July 10, 1913. The temperatures of 140 degrees Fahrenheit 60 degrees Celsius at Delta, Mexico. In August 1953 and 136.4 degrees Fahrenheit 58 degrees Celsius at San Luis, Mexico, on August 11, 1933, are not internationally accepted. The lowest temperature was -128.6 degrees Fahrenheit -89.6 degrees Celsius at Vostok Station in Antarctica on July 21, 1983. The record cold temperature for an inhabited area was -90.4 degrees Fahrenheit -68 degrees Celsius at Oymyakon, Siberia, population 4,000. On February 6, 1933. This temperature tied with the readings at Verkhoyansk, Siberia. On January 3, 1885, and February 5 and 7, 1892. The lowest temperature reading in the United States was -79.8 degrees Fahrenheit. -62.1 degrees Celsius, on January 23, 1971, in Prospect Creek, Alaska, for the contiguous 48 states. The coldest temperature was -69.7 degrees Fahrenheit -56.5 degrees Celsius at Rogers Pass, Montana, on January 20, 1954.
What is the largest artery in the human body?
The aorta is the largest artery in the human body. In adults, it is approximately the size of a garden hose. Its internal diameter is 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, thick.
How do renewable energy resources differ from fossil fuels?
The main sources of renewable energy are biofuels, such as wood, hydropower, geothermal, solar, and wind. Unlike fossil fuels, renewable energy resources are being replenished continuously and will never run out. Some sources of renewable energy, such as solar power and wind power, are perpetual, meaning the wind will blow and the sun will shine no matter how much energy is used. Sources of renewable energy that rely on agriculture, such as woods, are renewable as long as they are not depleted and exploited too rapidly.
Why do some dentists treat the molars and premolars of children with sealants?
Sealants, a soft plastic coating applied to the tooth surface, can protect a child's first and second permanent molars from decay by filling in the pits and fissures where food and bacteria might otherwise accumulate. The plastic is hardened with a special light or chemical.
What is the one gene one enzyme hypothesis?
In the 1930s, George Beadle, 1903 to 1989, and Boris F. Russey, 1901 to 1979, theorized that the variety of fruit fly mutations might be due to mutations of individual genes that code for each of the enzymes involved in a given pathway. Subsequently, Beadle and Edward Tatum, 1909 to 1975, performed a series of experiments with the orange bread mold Neurospora that elucidated the enzymatic pathway required by the fungus to produce a specific nutritional requirement, arginine. The researchers were able to create a series of mutants, each lacking in a different enzyme in the pathway. In this way they were able to piece together the sequence of events required for the production of arginine and thereby show where each mutant fit. The work of Beadle and Tatum provided important support for the one gene one enzyme hypothesis, which holds that the function of a gene is to produce a specific enzyme. Their work garnered a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1958.
How does Ru-486 cause an abortion?
A pill containing Ru-486, mifepristone, deprives a fertilized embryo of a compatible uterine environment, terminating a pregnancy within 49 days of fertilization. It was approved for use in the United States on September 28, 2000. It is taken under the supervision of a qualified physician in a clinical setting or physician's office. Sometimes it is used as an emergency contraceptive, morning after pill. After unprotected sexual intercourse even when more than 49 days have passed since the woman's last menstrual period.
Which is the only bone that does not touch another bone?
The hyoid bone is the only bone that does not touch another bone. Located above the larynx, it supports the tongue and provides attachment sites for the muscles of the neck and pharynx used in speaking and swallowing. The hyoid is carefully examined when there is a suspicion of strangulation, since it is often fractured from such trauma.
How long does it take for a person to adapt to dim light?
Rods give us vision in dim light but not in color and not with sharp detail. They are hundreds of times more sensitive to light than cones, letting us detect shape and movement in dim light. This type of photoreceptor takes about 15 minutes to fully adapt to very dim light.
What are the greenhouse gases?
Scientists recognize carbon dioxide, CO2, methane, CH4, chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, nitrous oxide, N20, and water vapor as significant greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases account for less than 1% of Earth's atmosphere. These gases trap heat in Earth's atmosphere, preventing the heat from escaping back into space. Human activities, such as using gasoline in automobiles for fuel, account for the release of carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxides.
Why do stars twinkle?
Stars actually shine with a more or less constant light. They appear to twinkle to those of us observing them from Earth due mostly to atmospheric interference. Molecules and dust particles float at random in Earth's covering of gases. When such floating particles pass between a star and a person observing it, there is a brief interruption in the stream of light. Added together, these brief interruptions give rise to twinkling stars.
How did lead contribute to the fall of the Roman Empire?
Some believe Romans from the period around 150 BCE may have been victims of lead poisoning. Symptoms of lead poisoning include sterility, general weakness, apathy, mental retardation, and early death. The lead could have been ingested in water taken from lead-lined water pipes or from food cooked in their lead-lined cooking pots or from wine served in lead-lined goblets. Unaware of its dangers, some ancient Romans unwittingly used lead as a sweetening agent or medical treatment for diarrhea. Lead poisoning could have caused infertility in women, leading to a subsequent long-term decline in the birth rate of the Roman upper classes. The effect of this inadvertent toxic food additive on Roman history, however, is only speculative.
What is the best soil pH for growing plants?
Nutrients such as phosphorus, calcium, potassium, and magnesium are most available to plants when the soil pH is between 6.0 and 7.5. Under highly acidic, low pH conditions, these nutrients become insoluble and relatively unavailable for uptake by plants. However, some plants, such as rhododendrons, grow better in acidic soils. High soil pH can also decrease the availability of nutrients. If the soil is more alkaline than pH 8, phosphorus, iron, and many trace elements become insoluble and unavailable for plant uptake.
What is the effect of radiation on humans?
When ionizing radiation penetrates living tissue, random collisions with atoms and molecules in its path cause the formation of ions and reactive radicals. These ions and reactive radicals break chemical bonds and cause other molecular changes that produce biological injury. At the cellular level, radiation exposure inhibits cell division and produces chromosomal damage and gene mutations as well as various other changes. Large enough doses of ionizing radiation will kill any kind of living cell.
When did the first computer virus spread via the Internet?
The first known case of large-scale damage caused by a computer virus spread via the Internet was in 1988. Robert Morris, Jr. 1965, a graduate student at Cornell University, crafted a worm virus that infected thousands of computers, shutting down many of them and causing millions of dollars of damage.
What plant produces the largest seed cones?
The largest seed cones are produced by cycads. They may be up to 1 yard, 1 meter, in length and weigh more than 3.3 pounds, 15 kilograms.
Which metal is the main component of pewter?
Tin at least 90%. Antimony, copper, and zinc may be added in place of lead to harden and strengthen pewter. Pewter may still contain lead, but high lead content will both tarnish the piece and dissolve into food and drink to become toxic. The alloy used today in fine quality pieces contain 91 to 95% minimum tin, 8% maximum antimony, 2.5% maximum copper, and 0 to 5% maximum bismuth, as determined by the European Standard for Pewter.
What was the contribution to medical science of a dog named Marjorie?
Marjorie was a diabetic black and white mongrel that was the first creature to be kept alive by insulin, a substance that controls the level of sugar in the blood.
Below are listed some pollutants found in houses. Why is exposure to asbestos a health hazard?
Asbestos fibers were used in building materials between 1900 and the early 1970s as insulation for walls and pipes, as fireproofing for walls and fireplaces, in soundproofing and acoustic ceiling tiles, as a strengthener for vinyl flooring and joint compounds, and as a paint texturizer. Asbestos poses a health hazard only if the tiny fibers are released into the air. But this can happen with any normal fraying or cracking. Asbestos removal aggravates this normal process and multiplies the danger. Level it should only be handled by a contractor trained in handling asbestos. Once released, the particles can hang suspended in the air for more than 20 hours. Exposure to asbestos has long been known to cause asbestosis. This is a chronic, restrictive lung disease caused by the inhalation of tiny mineral asbestos fibers that scar lung tissues. Asbestos has also been linked with cancers of the larynx, pharynx, oral cavity, pancreas, kidneys, ovaries, and gastrointestinal tract. The American Lung Association reports that prolonged exposure doubles the likelihood that a smoker will develop lung cancer. It takes cancer 15 to 30 years to develop from asbestos. Mesothelioma is a rare cancer affecting the surface lining of the pleura, lung, or peritoneum, abdomen, which generally spreads rapidly over large surfaces of either the thoracic or abdominal cavities. Current treatment methods include surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, although mesothelioma continues to be difficult to control.
What is a reformulated gasoline?
Oil companies are being required to offer new gasolines that burn more cleanly and have less impact on the environment. Typically, reformulated gasoline, RFG, contains lower concentrations of benzene, aromatics, and olefins, less sulfur, a lower Reid vapor pressure, RVP, and some percentage of an oxygenate. Non-aromatic component, such as methyl tertiary butyl ether, MTBE. MTBE is a high-octane gasoline blending component produced by the reaction of isobutylene and methanol. It was developed to meet the ozone ambient air quality standards. But its unique characteristics as a water pollutant pose a challenge to the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. In meeting the requirements of the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, and the Underground Storage Tank Program. The Clean Air Act called for reformulated gasoline to be sold in the cities with the worst smog pollution beginning January 1. 1995 reformulated gasoline is now used in 17 cities and the District of Columbia.
Are turtles endangered?
Worldwide turtle populations have declined due to several reasons, including habitat destruction, exploitation of species by humans for their eggs, leather, and meat, and their becoming accidentally caught in the nets of fishermen. In particular danger are sea turtles, such as Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, Lepidoscelis kempii, which is believed to have a population of only a few hundred. Other species include the Central American river turtle, Dermatemis mawii, the green sea turtle, Chelonia, and the leatherback sea turtle, Dermochelis coriacea. Endangered tortoises include the ungulated tortoise, Geochelone inophora, the desert tortoise, Gopherus agassizii, and the Galapagos tortoise, Geochelone elephantopus.
What is biomass energy?
The catch-all term biomass includes all the living organisms in an area. Wood, crops, and crop waste, and wastes of plant, mineral, and animal matter are part of the biomass. Much of it is in garbage, which can be burned for heat energy or allowed to decay and produce methane gas. However, some crops are grown specifically for energy, including sugar cane, sorghum, ocean kelp, water hyacinth, and various species of trees. It has been estimated that 90% of U.S. waste products could be burned to provide as much energy as 100 million tons of coal. 20% will not burn, but can be recycled. The use of biomass energy is significantly higher in developing countries where electricity and motor vehicles are scarcer.
In coal mining, what is meant by damp?
Damp is a poisonous or explosive gas in a mine. The most common type of damp is fire damp, also known as methane. White damp is carbon monoxide. Black damp or choke damp is a mixture of nitrogen and carbon dioxide formed by mine fires and explosions of fire damp in mines. Black damp extinguishes fire and suffocates its victims.
What is the difference between the degrees Doctor of Dental Surgery, DDS, and Doctor of Medical Dentistry, DMD?
The title depends entirely on the school's preference in terminology. The degrees are equivalent.
What are the common cuts of gemstones?
Modern gem cutting uses faceted cutting for most transparent gems. In faceted cutting, numerous facets geometrically disposed to bring out the beauty of light and color to the best advantage are cut. The four most common cuts are the brilliant, the rose, the baguette, and the step or trap cut. The step or trap cut is also known as the emerald cut and is used for emeralds. The brilliant and rose cuts are often used for diamonds.
What is the Mohs scale?
The Mohs scale is a standard of 10 minerals by which the hardness of a mineral is rated. It was introduced in 1812 by the German mineralogist Friedrich Mohs, 1773–1839. The minerals are arranged from softest to hardest. Harder minerals with higher numbers can scratch those with a lower number.
What is the hydrologic cycle?
The hydrologic cycle takes place in the hydrosphere, which is the region containing all the water in the atmosphere and Earth's surface. It involves 5 phases: condensation, infiltration, runoff, evaporation, and precipitation. Rain, and other precipitation, is part of the hydrologic cycle.
How is the distance from a lightning flash calculated?
Count the number of seconds between seeing a flash of lightning and hearing the sound of the thunder. Divide the number by 5 to determine the number of miles away that the lightning flashed.
How much wood is used to make a ton of paper?
In the United States, the wood used for the manufacture of paper is mainly from small diameter bolts and pulpwood. It is usually measured by the cord or by weight. Although the fiber used in making paper is overwhelmingly wood fiber, a large percentage of other ingredients is needed. 1 ton of a typical paper requires 2 cords of wood, but also requires 55,000 gallons. 208,000 liters, of water, 102 pounds, 46 kilograms, of sulfur, 350 pounds, 159 kilograms, of lime. 289 pounds, 131 kilograms, of clay, 1.2 tons of coal, 112 kilowatt-hours of power, 20 pounds, 9 kilograms, of dye and pigments, and 108 pounds, 49 kilograms, of starch, as well as other ingredients.
What's the difference between a bit and a byte?
Byte, a common unit of computer storage, holds the equivalent of a single character, such as a letter, a number, 2, a symbol, $, a decimal point, or a space. It is usually equivalent to 8 data bits and 1 parity bit. A bit, a binary digit, the smallest unit of information in a digital computer, is equivalent to a single 0 or 1. The parity bit is used to check for errors in the bits making up the byte. 8 data bits per byte is the most common size used by computer manufacturers.
What is a philosopher's stone?
A philosopher's stone is the name of a substance believed by medieval alchemists to have the power to change baser metals into gold or silver. It had, according to some, the power of prolonging life and of curing all injuries and diseases. The pursuit of it by alchemists led to the discovery of several chemical substances. However, the magical philosopher's stone has since proved fictitious.
What are the causes of epilepsy?
Epilepsy is a brain disorder in which clusters of neurons in the brain sometimes signal abnormally. Epilepsy may develop because of an abnormality in brain wiring, an imbalance of neurotransmitters, or some combination of these factors. During an epileptic seizure, neurons may fire as many as 500 times a second, much faster than the normal rate of about 80 times a second. When the normal pattern of neuronal activity becomes disturbed, strange sensations, emotions and behavior, convulsions, muscle spasms, and loss of consciousness may be experienced.
Which elements have the highest and lowest boiling points?
Helium has the lowest boiling point of all the elements at -452.074 degrees Fahrenheit. -268.93 degrees Celsius, followed by hydrogen -423.16 degrees Fahrenheit -252.87 degrees Celsius. According to the CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics, the highest boiling point for an element is that of rhenium 10,104.8 degrees Fahrenheit 5,596 degrees Celsius, followed by tungsten 10,031 degrees Fahrenheit 5,555 degrees Celsius. Other sources record tungsten with the highest boiling point, followed by rhenium.
Why do cows have 4 stomachs?
The stomachs of cows, as well as all ruminants, are divided into 4 sections: the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasums. Ruminants eat rapidly and do not chew much of their food completely before they swallow it. The liquid part of their food enters the reticulum first, while the solid part of their food enters the rumen, where it softens. Bacteria in the rumen initially break it down as a first step in digestion. Ruminants later regurgitate it into the mouth, where they chew their cud. Cows chew their cud about 6 to 8 times per day, spending a total of 5 to 7 hours in rumination. The chewed cud goes directly into the other chambers of the stomach, where various microorganisms assist in further digestion.
What is the ecliptic?
Ecliptic refers to the apparent yearly path of the Sun through the sky with respect to the stars. In the spring, the ecliptic in the northern hemisphere is angled high in the evening sky. In fall, the ecliptic lies much closer to the horizon.
Who discovered cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR? As a method to resuscitate an individual whose heart had stopped?
Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, is a first aid technique that combines mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and rhythmic compression of the chest to a person whose heart has stopped. The Scottish surgeon William Tosach, c. 1700 after 1771, first performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation in 1732. The technique was not further developed, or widely used, for many centuries until Dr. Edward Schaeffer, 1850 to 1935, developed a method of chest pressure to stimulate respiration. In 1910 the American Red Cross adopted and began to teach Schaefer's method. A team of specialists at Johns Hopkins Medical School, Orth Lor Langworthy, 1897 to 1996. R.D. Hooker, and William B. Cowenhoven, 1886 to 1975, attempted to improve on the technique. Cowenhoven realized that chest compression could maintain blood flow in a person whose heart had stopped. In 1958 Cowenhoven's method of chest compression was used on a 2-year-old child whose heart had stopped. The American Red Cross endorsed the technique in 1963.
What is the difference in the functions of the rods and cones found in the eyes?
Rods and cones contain photoreceptors that convert light first to chemical energy and then into electrical energy for transmission to the vision centers of the brain via the optic nerve. Rods are specialized for vision in dim light, they cannot detect color. But they are the first receptors to detect movement and register shapes. There are about 125 million rods in each eye. Cones provide acute vision, functioning best in bright daylight. They allow us to see colors and fine detail. Cones are divided into 3 different types, which absorb wavelengths in the short, blue, middle, green, and long, red, ranges. There are about 7 million cones in each eye.
What are Fibonacci numbers?
Fibonacci numbers are a series of numbers where each, after the second term, is the sum of the 2 preceding numbers, for example, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on. They were first described by Leonardo Fibonacci, c. 1180 c. 1250. Also known as Leonard of Pisa, as part of a thesis on series in his most famous book Liber Abaci, the Book of the Calculator. Published in 1202 and later revised by him. Fibonacci numbers are used frequently to illustrate natural sequences, such as the spiral organization of a sunflower's seeds. The chambers of a nautilus shell, or the reproductive capabilities of rabbits.
How many vertebrae are in the neck of a giraffe?
A giraffe neck has 7 vertebrae, the same as other mammals, but the vertebrae are greatly elongated.
What are cyanobacterial blooms?
Cyanobacterial, blue-green algae. Blooms are occurring more frequently in freshwater lakes and along coastlines. They are often due to nutrient enrichment of the lakes. especially nitrates and phosphates, caused by human activities. Cyanobacteria grow faster at warmer temperatures. The thick masses of cyanobacteria absorb so much light that the water temperature increases. The algae at the base of the aquatic food webs prefer cooler temperatures and cannot compete successfully with rapidly growing cyanobacteria in the warmer temperatures. Microcystis, nostoc, and anabina are examples of cyanobacteria that cause blooms as well as release neurotoxins. This category of blooms is referred to as harmful algal blooms, HABs. They can occur in drinking water and survive typical water purification processes.
What is mad cow disease and how does it affect humans?
Mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, is a cattle disease of the central nervous system. First identified in Britain in 1986, BSE is a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. XE, a disease characterized by the damage caused to the brain tissue. The tissue is pierced with small holes like a sponge. The disease is incurable, untreatable, and fatal. Researchers believe BSE is linked to Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD. In humans through the consumption of contaminated bovine products. CJD is a fatal illness marked by brain tissue deterioration and progressive degeneration of the central nervous system.
When was the first module of the International Space Station launched?
The first module of the International Space Station was launched by Russia in November 1998 following many years of planning. The Space Shuttle Endeavour brought the first U.S. built module to the space station in December 1998. A second Russian module arrived in July 2000 followed by the first crew in December 2000. The members of the first crew to live in the space station were Sergei K. Krikalev and Yuri P. Gajenko from Russia and William M. Bill Shepard from the United States. Construction of the International Space Station is expected to be completed in 2011 and will, hopefully, be operational through 2015.
How does the per capita solid waste generation in the United States compare to other countries?
The reliance on non-durable goods and excess packaging suggests that the United States is a throwaway society. One of the differences in the per capita amount of garbage generated throughout the world is due to the cost of waste disposal. Among the developed nations, people have the incentive to waste less when disposal is more expensive. Developing nations generally consume less and consequently generate less waste.
What is fool's gold?
Iron pyrite, FeS2, is a mineral popularly known as fool's gold. Because of its metallic luster and pale brass yellow color, it is often mistaken for gold. Real gold is much heavier, softer, not brittle, and not grooved.
When offered a choice between plastic or paper bags for your groceries, which should you choose?
The answer is neither. Both are environmentally harmful, and the question of which is the more damaging has no clear-cut answer. 12 million barrels of oil, a non-renewable resource, are required to produce 100 billion plastic bags. Plastic bags degrade slowly in landfills and can harm wildlife if swallowed. And producing them pollutes the environment. In contrast, 35 million trees are cut down to produce 25 million brown paper. Bags accompanied by air and water pollution during the manufacturing process. Although each can be recycled. The EPA estimates that only 1% of plastic bags and 20% of paper bags are recycled. Instead of choosing between paper and plastic bags, bring your own reusable canvas or string containers to the store. And save and reuse any paper or plastic bags you get.
When was the first artificial heart used?
On December 2, 1982, Dr. Barney B. Clark, 1921 to 1983, a 61-year-old retired dentist, became the first human to receive a permanently implanted artificial heart. It was known as the Jarvik 7 after its inventor, Dr. Robert Jarvik. 1946. The 7.5-hour operation was performed by Dr. William DeVries, 1943, a surgeon at the University of Utah Medical Center. Dr. Clark died on March 23, 1983, 112 days later. In Louisville, Kentucky, William Schroeder, 1923 to 1986, survived 620 days with an artificial heart. November 25, 1984, to August 7, 1986. On January 11, 1990, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA) recalled the Jarvik 7, which had been the only artificial heart approved by the FDA for use. Two models of a total artificial heart, TA, are now available that can replace the ventricles, the two lower chambers, of the heart. Eligible patients must have end-stage heart failure, meaning all treatments except a heart transplant have failed. A TA may keep patients alive while they wait for heart transplants, or may keep patients alive who are not eligible for a heart transplant. The two brands are the Cardioist and ABIOCOR. The Cardioist is connected to a power source outside of the body via tubes. that run from inside the chest to the outside through holes in the abdomen. The ABIOCOR is a battery-powered TA that is completely contained in the chest. The battery is charged through the skin with a special magnetic charger.
How much DNA is in a typical human cell?
If the DNA in a single human cell were stretched out and laid end to end, it would measure approximately 6.5 feet, 2 meter. The average human body contains 10 to 20 billion miles. 16 to 32 billion kilometers of DNA distributed among trillions of cells. If the total DNA in all the cells from one human were unraveled, it would stretch to the sun and back more than 500 times.
What caused the Chernobyl accident?
The worst nuclear power accident in history, which occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Ukraine, will affect, in one form or another, 20% of the Republic's population, 2.2 million people. On April 26, 1986, at 1:23:40 a.m., during unauthorized experiments by the operators in which safety systems were deliberately circumvented in order to learn more about the plant's operation, one of the 4 reactors rapidly overheated and its water coolant flashed into steam. The hydrogen formed from the steam reacted with the graphite moderator to cause 2 major explosions and a fire. The explosions blew apart the 1,000-ton, 907 metric ton, lid of the reactor, and released radioactive debris high into the atmosphere. It is estimated that 50 tons of fuel went into the atmosphere. An additional 70 tons of fuel and 700 tons of radioactive reactor graphite settled in the vicinity of the damaged unit. Human error and design features, such as a positive void coefficient type of reactor, use of graphite in construction, and lack of a containment building, are generally cited as the causes of the accident. 31 people died from trying to stop the fires. More than 240 others sustained severe radiation sickness. Eventually 150,000 people living near the reactor were relocated, some of whom may never be allowed to return home. Fallout from the explosions, containing radioactive isotope cesium-137, was carried by the winds westward across Europe. The problems created by the Chernobyl disaster are overwhelming and continue today. Particularly troubling is the fact that by 1990 to 1991, a 5-fold increase had occurred in the rate of thyroid cancers in children in Belarus. A significant rise in general morbidity has also taken place among children in the heaviest hit areas of Gomel and Mogilev.
What is Fuller's Earth?
It is a naturally occurring white or brown clay containing aluminum magnesium silicate. Fuller's earth acts as a catalyst and was named for a process known as fulling, a process used to clean grease from wool and cloth. It is currently used for lightening the color of oils and fats, as a pigment extender, as a filter, as an absorbent, for example, in litter boxes to absorb animal waste, and in floor sweeping compounds.
What is reflexology?
Reflexology is the application of specific pressures to reflex points in the hands and feet. The reflex points relate to every organ and every part of the body. Massaging of the reflex points is done to prevent or cure diseases. Believed to have been used in Asian cultures as long as 2,000 years ago. Reflexology was introduced to the United States at the turn of the century by Dr. William Fitzgerald, 1872–1942, and Eunice D. Ingham, 1889–1974. Today nearly 25,000 certified practitioners can be found throughout the world.
Among angiosperms, what is the most important family?
Angiosperms, commonly known as flowering plants, include the grass family. This family is of greater importance than any other family of flowering plants. The edible grains of cultivated grasses, known as cereals, are the basic foods of most civilizations. Wheat, rice, and corn are the most extensively grown of all food crops. Other important cereals are barley, sorghum, oats, millet, and rye.
How is Henry David Thoreau associated with the environment?
Henry David Thoreau, 1817–1862, was a writer and naturalist from New England. His most familiar work, Walden, describes the time he spent in a cabin near Walden Pond in Massachusetts. He is also known for being one of the first to write and lecture on the topic of forest succession. His work, along with that of John Muir, 1838–1914, and others, has served to inspire those others to understand the natural world and provide for its conservation.
When did Mount St. Helens erupt?
Mount St. Helens, located in southwestern Washington state in the Cascades Mountain Range, erupted on May 18, 1980. 61 people died as a result of the eruption. This was the first known eruption in the 48 contiguous United States to claim a human life. Geologists call Mount St. Helens a composite volcano, a steep-sided often symmetrical cone constructed of alternating layers of lava flows, ash, and other volcanic debris. Composite volcanoes tend to erupt explosively. Mount St. Helens and the other active volcanoes in the Cascade Mountains are a part of the Ring of Fire. The Pacific Zone having frequent and destructive volcanic activity. Mt. St. Helens erupted again in October 2004. A steam plume billowed 10,000 feet, 3,048 meters, into the air. The eruption continued for 2.5 years, building a new lava dome. The new lava dome measured about 125 million cubic yards, 95.6 million cubic meters, or a volume equal to nearly 200 large sports stadiums. The amount of lava that erupted would have been enough to pave 7 highway lanes. 3 feet, 0.9 meter, thick, from New York City to Portland, Oregon. There was no loss of life during this eruptive period. Volcanoes have not only been active in Washington, but also in 3 other U.S. states: California, Alaska, and Hawaii. Lassen Peak is one of several volcanoes in the Cascade Range. It last erupted in 1921. Mount Katmai in Alaska had an eruption in 1912 in which the flood of hot ash formed the Valley of 10,000 Smokes 15 miles, 24 kilometers, away. And Hawaii has its famed Mauna Loa, which is the world's largest active volcano. Being 60 miles, 97 kilometers, in width at its base.
What are some common causes of poisoning?
Poisoning is defined as the exposure to any substance in sufficient quantity to cause adverse health effects. Poisonings can be grouped into several different categories, including intentional, accidental, occupational and environmental, social and iatrogenic. Accidental poisonings are the most common, with more than 90% occurring in children at home. Intentional poisonings are usually suicide-related, with carbon monoxide being one of the most frequently used agents. Toxic chemical releases in industrial accidents are an occupational and environmental hazard. How was Mr.
Why is titanium dioxide the most widely used white pigment?
Titanium dioxide, TO2, also known as titania, titanic anhydride, titanium oxide, or titanium white, has become the predominant white pigment in the world because of its high refractive index, lack of absorption of visible light, ability to be produced in the right size range, and its stability. It is the whitest known pigment, unrivaled for color, opacity, stain resistance, and durability. It is also non-toxic. The main consuming industries are paint, printing inks, plastics, and ceramics. Titanium dioxide is also used in the manufacture of floor coverings, paper, rubber, and welding rods.
What is creosote?
Creosote is a yellowish, poisonous, oily liquid obtained from the distillation of coal or wood tar. Coal tar constitutes the major part of the liquid condensate. Obtained from the dry distillation or carbonization of coal to coke. Crude creosote oil, also called dead oil or pitch oil, is obtained by distilling coal tar and is used as a wood preservative. Railroad ties, poles, fence posts, marine pilings, and lumber for outdoor use are impregnated with creosote in large cylindrical vessels. This treatment can greatly extend the useful life of wood that is exposed to the weather. Creosote that is distilled from wood tar is used in pharmaceuticals. Other uses of creosote include disinfectants and solvents. In 1986, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, began restricting the use of creosote as a wood preservative because of its poisonous and carcinogenic nature.
Is coral bleaching related to changes in the environment?
Although corals can capture prey, many tropical species are dependent on photosynthetic algae, zooxanthellae, for nutrition. These algae live within the cells that line the digestive cavity of the coral. The symbiotic relationship between coral and zooxanthellae is mutually beneficial. The algae provide the coral with oxygen and carbon and nitrogen compounds. The coral supplies the algae with ammonia, waste product, from which the algae make nitrogenous compounds for both partners. Coral bleaching is the stress-induced loss of zooxanthellae that live in coral cells. In coral bleaching, the algae lose their pigmentation or are expelled from coral cells. Without the algae, coral become malnourished and die. The causes of coral bleaching are not completely understood, but it is believed that environmental factors are involved. Pollution, invasive bacteria such as Vibrio, salinity changes, temperature changes, and high concentrations of ultraviolet radiation, associated with the destruction of the ozone layer, all contribute to coral bleaching.